time I will move the speakers up a little closer, and maybe we'll move it up here. I didn't know we were going to sit. This is where the shade is, huh? Is that the deal? Okay, well, that's good. That's good. We have, I don't know if did you ever hear about Billy? You ever hear about Billy? Billy's a little Catholic boy, lives in town. Billy wanted a bike, something fierce. And so Billy asked his mom and dad, and his mom and dad are like, no, I'm not getting you a bike. You can't have a bike. We don't have enough money for a bike. You can't get a bike. Talks to dad. No, you can't get a bike. Talks to mom. Grandma. That's the next step. Goes to grandma. Can I get a bike? No, you can't get a bike. And so he has to go to desperate measures to get the bike. You know what desperate measures are for most of us? We begin to pray. And so he gets down on his knees and he says, oh, God, if you will allow me, God, to have a bike, if you'll give me a bike, I will be good for the rest of my life. But Billy's smart. I don't know if you know Billy. Billy's smart. Billy said, well, that's the dumbest thing I ever said in my life. I know that I can't be good for the rest of my life, and I know that God knows that I'm not going to be good for the rest of my life, so that ain't going to fly. So he gets back down on his knees and said, all right, God, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. God, if you will give me a bike, I will be good for the next 3 weeks. And he gets up and he's like, oh, that ain't going to work either. That ain't going to work either. I know I can't be good for 3 weeks. I can't be good 10 minutes, let alone 3 weeks. I'm not going to get a bike. And God's smart enough to know that I'm not going to get that. And so he's in a nice Catholic family. He goes over, he finds a statue of Mary, and he takes this into his room, and he puts it in a box and puts it under his bed, and he gets down on his knees and he says, all right, Jesus, if you ever want to see your mom again, I'll get a bike. See, this is what we do. We sometimes try to manipulate God, right? We think that we're smarter than God. We oftentimes think we're smarter than God. When we do things that aren't what God tells us to do, the reality is you think God's a moron. You think God's stupid. How many of you think God's stupid? Nobody wants to admit it, right? But when we act contrary to the things that God says, if God says that one thing is bad and you say, well, it's not bad, then what are you saying? Well, God, you're stupid. God, you're not smart. God, I'm smarter than you are. When I was a youth pastor back, it's been a while. I started in '97 being a youth pastor, and I was a lot thinner then. And I ate as much as I eat now, and I don't know what happened to me. But I had one saying, one thing that I really tried to get into the kids, and I got it into them in English and in Spanish, because we go on mission trips. I'd say, God is really smart. You say, well, that's kind of a dumb little saying to it's not. It's not. God is smart. What's the point? God is smarter than you are. And so you teenagers, you adults, if you look at what God says about something and you say, well, I'm going to do the opposite, even though I know God said this, then you think that you're smarter than God. We went to Mexico. I put it on their shirts. Dios es muy inteligente. God is really smart. He knows. He's smarter than we are. And this whole world that we live in, is all about who's the smartest, who's got the best plan. When we talked about 1 Corinthians Chapter 2, we're talking about a group of people who are really big on knowledge, right? All your great philosophers, where did they come from? Ancient Greece, right? We got Plato, we got Aristotle, right? It's all thinking weird stuff. You ever study them people? You're like, man, that's just like you're like doing circles in your brain, right? The whole point is that how do you get God's wisdom? And is there a difference between God's wisdom and man's wisdom? Man's got a lot of wisdom. We've got all kinds of things that we've learned, all kinds of things that we've been taught, all kinds of things that we've been... and I'm not saying that human wisdom is necessarily bad. I'm saying that it is oftentimes contrary to God. If it contradicts what God's wisdom is, you're in trouble. You're believing a lie. And so if you got a Bible, we're going to turn today to 1 Corinthians Chapter 2. We're in a series called Messy Church. And what we're going to find is there are two kinds of wisdom in the world. Really, it boils down to two. There is wisdom of the world, okay? That is what people figure out with their own brains, okay? the collective knowledge of all the people have come up with philosophies and ways to do things, ways to get to God. All the ways to get to God that come from people's minds, like certain kinds of meditation and being good, those are all men's brain has come up with these things. Okay? They've come up with these ideas. That's the wisdom of the world. And the problem we have in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 is that we have a group of people, the Corinthians, the struggle is that they're all concerned about being powerful. They're all concerned about, I follow so-and-so, I follow so-and-so. Apollos is my teacher, he baptized me, and so I'm a better Christian than you. And all of that is all based on this idea of human wisdom, natural wisdom. And the other kind is God's wisdom. Where would you find God's wisdom? If you want to know what's on God's mind, where would you find that out? Let me ask you, if I want to know what's on Cheryl Lee's mind, now that could be scary, right? But if I want to know what's on Cheryl Lee's mind, I can just project and say, well, I think this is what she's thinking. Or if I want to know what Cheryl Lee wants in order to have a relationship with somebody, how you approach Cheryl Lee and all that, I could just come up with that out of my own brain and say, well, I think that probably the way that Cheryl Lee would like people to approach her is this way. And the best way, though, would be to ask Cheryl Lee, right? Because Cheryl Lee knows what Cheryl Lee likes, right? Dave don't even know what Cheryl Lee likes, right?
I know what she don't like.
She absolutely, right? He knows what she don't like. But if you want to know what Cheryl Lee likes, if you want to know what Cheryl Lee's passionate about, if you want to know the truth according to Cheryl Lee, you got to ask Cheryl Lee. If you want to know the truth about God, about how to have a relationship with God, if you want to know the truth about that, it does not come from you mentally coming up with all kinds of arguments like all the great philosophers of the world have. It has to be revealed to you by God. God tells us the truth. When God says something, it's true. So if you want to know what's true, because some people are trying today to say that there's no such thing as truth, right? Truth is all relative. Well, it's true for you, but it's not true for me, right? Well, I believe this. Politically, I believe this, or religiously, I believe this, or that's true for me, but that's not true for you. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. If something is true, it's true, right? Well, that's blue to me, but that's really polka dots. No, it is something. It is true. It may appear that way to you, but the reality is that there is an absolute truth. And that truth is known by God. And if you ever want to really compare it and say, how do I know that what I believe and what I'm doing is true? How do I know the truth? You got to ask the one who knows the truth. Only God knows the truth. And how do you get that? Do you do it by manipulating? No, you don't. No. The way you get that truth is God has to reveal it to you. It's called revelation. God speaks. God teaches. We don't just say, well, I don't want to talk to you, God. I'm not going to communicate to you. I'm just going to figure this out on my own, how to have a relationship with you. And how to. No, that's not how it works. God says, God reveals it to you. Let's take a look at this in. Actually, go back to this. I'm going on a tangent here, but that's okay. Go back to Genesis chapter 3. Okay, let's go back to Genesis chapter 3, and I won't keep you a long time today, but because it's going to rain. But I ordered us those waterproof Bibles. So here's what happens at the fall, right? Right from the very beginning, we had two kinds of wisdom, didn't we? Right from the beginning, there was God's wisdom. What was God's wisdom? God says, don't eat from that tree. Okay? Don't eat from that tree. Everything's going to be great if you don't eat from that tree. You can eat from all the other trees, but don't eat from that one. That tree is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, all right? Don't eat from that tree, okay? Don't eat from it. The devil said, no, wait a second. Look at this. Look at this. It says in verse 6, it says, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She is not trying to get God's wisdom. She's not seeking after the wisdom that comes from God. She's trying to seek after wisdom apart from God. The wisdom of God was already given to her. Don't eat from that tree. She is seeking human wisdom, and as a result of seeking human wisdom, she'll never get what she really wants. We're expelled. It is that way still today. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. We're gonna dive into this. Or chapter 2. Chapter 2. Says verse 1, "And so it was with me, brothers and sisters, when I came to you, I did not come with eloquence or human wisdom as I proclaimed to you the testimony of God." Okay, so what we remember last time, and if you want to hear the story of how Paul gets into 1 Corinthians, and that comes, you can write this down. Acts chapter 18 will show you how that happened, how they got there, okay, with Priscilla and Aquila. But what happens is he's saying when he came there, he didn't come with eloquence, right? I didn't come with, or human wisdom, right? I didn't come with a great degree from a great college that explains to me how to explain all the mysteries of God. That's not how I gave you the mysteries of God, right? That's not what made me a great apostle, is that I was smarter than everybody else, or that I had more power than everybody else. He says, "So it was with me, brothers and sisters, when I came to you, I did not come with eloquence." And he was probably an eloquent speaker, but that's not what he came with. Or human wisdom. Did he have human wisdom? Yeah. He was smart. He probably had large sections of the Old Testament memorized. So he knows all the religious stuff too. He's got all of it. But this is what he says, "No, for I resolved." What does resolved mean? Resolved means that I made a conscious decision about this. I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Okay? What he's saying is that all that stuff, all that wisdom, everything that I gained and I'd worked so hard to get all those years before I became a Christian, all of that, I considered that really, I put that aside. I resolved that I don't know that. That's not where the answers are. The answers are in Jesus. The answers are in knowing God, knowing Jesus, and knowing Him crucified. Now, I know you're saying, "Dustin, where are you going with this? This is a little sideways. I'm having a hard time following you on this." Let's keep going, because he explains himself here. "My message and my preaching were not wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power." This is one of the great problems we have as a church, is that we intellectualize everything and we try to do this all within our own power, being a church. We read all the books, and we think the smartest person in the room is the most spiritual person in the room. The most powerful person in the room is the most spiritual person in the room. That's not the case. That's not the case. That's not how it works in God's kingdom. Paul resolves. He says, "I am resolving that none of that means anything to me. All that matters is knowing Christ. I want to know His mind. I want to know what's on your mind. What's on your mind, God? So that my mind can be like your mind. So that I can think what you think." What is the wisdom of God? If we look in the book of John, we find out that wisdom is logos. That is Jesus, the full wisdom. So in the Old Testament, God revealed a whole bunch of stuff about Himself, right? And He did it in little specks and spots here, and a prophet speaks here and tells us a little bit. We see a little piece of the puzzle. But then when Jesus shows up, we see the whole wisdom of God. All the truth about God shows up in one person. It shows up in Jesus. You want to know the wisdom of God, relationship with God, you want to know the mysteries of the world, it's found in that guy Jesus, because that's how He reveals Himself. And most of us, 99% of us, think it's foolish. He showed up, and what did they do? They said, this is foolish. That can't be from God. It doesn't match up with our intellect. It doesn't add up with our mind. It doesn't add up with what we value. It doesn't add up with power. It doesn't add up to any of that. This is a scrawny Jewish guy getting nailed to a cross. That's foolish. That's ridiculous. It's foolishness. To those who don't know Christ, it's foolishness. And so many people don't come to Christ. Why do they not come to Christ? Because they can't see the wisdom. It appears to them as foolishness. You say, well, so how are they going to come to Christ? How are they going to come to Christ if they're living in the natural mind and they're thinking a certain way and they're thinking naturally, they're thinking humanly, they're thinking smart, they're thinking power, they're thinking, I want to be the most important person in the room, I want to be the most powerful person in the room, I want to be the most spiritual. How do I do that? What gets me there and what keeps me from understanding this Jesus and having it not appear foolish to me? Let's just go back and see what is God's wisdom and what is human wisdom. Let's bear this up. Human wisdom is natural wisdom, okay? Like any other animal, here's what natural wisdom is. Any other animal lives this way. They live as though there's nothing beyond the physical realm, right? So your dog doesn't think about heaven. Your dog just thinks about eating, right? And maybe getting a little bit of loving, okay? They're not thinking about anything spiritual. That dog is, whether you believe it or not, self-centered. He's focused on himself. Your cat in particular is self-centered, right? It is self-preserving, trying to preserve their own self. That's the attitude of all the people that were trying to crucify Jesus. All the religious leaders that crucified Jesus, they were self-centered. They were self-preserving. We got to keep our positions of power, right? We're smarter than God. We're smarter than this guy that obviously is from God, but we're smarter than him. Let's kill him. The second thing is the natural man who embraces human wisdom doesn't want the things of God and regards them as foolish because its wisdom is from outside the human brain. It's from outside of their system. Right? The whole idea of Jesus was outside of the system they was used to. How they functioned and everything. How they became successful in business. How they became successful in church. It was all through human grabs for power and getting smarter and all that. Jesus flips it all upside down. Jesus is all about the last shall be first. Right? The greatest among you is the servant of all. And so it doesn't make any sense to them. The natural man with human wisdom can't understand godly wisdom because it is discerned, listen to this, it is discerned spiritually. Let me explain to you what that means. The wisdom of God, if you want to understand, let's just put it in regular plain text. I want to understand God. I want to grow spiritually. I want to be strong in my faith. I want to know God. How do I know that? Do I go and read tons of people's books about stuff, or do I try to know the mind of God? There's a difference. There really is legitimately a difference between reading all kinds of books and reading philosophies and theology and all that and understanding the mind of God. Because the one you are getting all of your information mentally, intellectually, that's where you're seeking it. The mind of God is revealed to you spiritually. It's revealed to you spiritually. We'll get into this in a minute. God's wisdom comes from God, not by human mental figuring, but by divine revelation. Right? God tells us. He gives us the information. He gives us His Word in the Old Testament, and then the entire plan in the person of Christ. So here's the question. Who can receive God's wisdom? Let's read on. Who's going to get this? Who's going to get the wisdom of God, and who's going to be left out and be stuck with just human wisdom? Let's find out. Verse 6, we do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature. Now, what's the mature? Okay? Now, a lot of people read this and say mature are the really Christian people. They're the people that read the Bible a lot. They're the people that spend a lot of time on their prayer. Lot of, they're doing all kinds of, they know the most information. They're the most spiritual, okay? That's not what this is talking about. It's talking about the difference between spiritual people, calling them mature, and unspiritual people. People who don't have the wisdom of God. Okay, watch this. We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. We do declare God's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it. There's rulers again. It keeps talking about rulers. Why is it talking about rulers? Rulers of this age. Because what keeps people from understanding the wisdom of God is this desire for rule and power. Even in our own lives. Even in your own life. I want to be ahead. I want to be greater than everybody else. I care more about me than everyone else. I want my reputation to be good, and I want people to look at me nicely. The Pharisees are like, we want people to value us. We want people to think that we're great. Not this little Jewish guy over here. Crucify him. And as a result, they can't understand. They're not submitting to God. They're building themselves up and making themselves powerful at the expense of knowing the wisdom of God. What they've done is by building ourselves up and filling ourselves with pride, we negate our ability to understand the wisdom of God. Okay? We can no longer understand it. We can't see it. We can't discern it. It says, none of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Obviously, they wouldn't have killed him if they understood what was going on. Why didn't they understand it? Because they're seeking power. They're all about power and earthly wisdom. However, it is written, no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things that God has prepared for those who love him. Verse 10, these are the things God has revealed to us by the Spirit. We get it by the Spirit. That's interesting. What does that mean, you get it by the Spirit? What is it to have the Spirit? What is the Spirit? Let's turn to Galatians chapter 5, if you got that, and I'll read it to you here. Galatians is just a couple pages. Hop over to Galatians chapter 5. And I want you to look with me at chapter 5, verse 16 to 26. And listen closely to what this says. It says, so I say, walk by the Spirit. Walk by the Spirit. Okay, so you want to know who's the most spiritual person in the room, right? That's what most of these people are concerned about. Who's the most powerful? Who's the most spiritual? Who's the most holy? Who's the most godly? Who's the top dog, right? That's what they care about. And as a result, they're not receiving the wisdom of God, okay? And so this is spiritual living. Some of you are like, Dustin, I want to know how to be a really good Christian. I want to know how to be really strong in my faith. Isn't that why you came? Isn't that why you showed up today? You want to be stronger in your faith. You want to love Jesus more. You want to understand the mind of God more. So, Dustin, how do you do that? How do you do that? Is it about learning all the information, or is there something else? It's spiritually discerned. Look at this in verse 16. So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh, right? Human wisdom teaches what is contrary to the Spirit of God, okay? They're in cahoots. They're against each other. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want, but if you are led by the Spirit, that's the key word, led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. How are you led by the Spirit? You have to stop being led by the flesh. You have to stop You have to make a conscious decision to not live by the flesh. It's what Paul did. He said, listen, I'm going to live by the Spirit. What I care about is the cross. I care about Jesus. And I want what I know. I know it'll be true, what's revealed to me by God through His Word and through the Spirit. And so who's the most spiritual? Is it the person that knows? I'll just tell you this. Is it the person who knows the most about the Bible that's the most spiritual person? No, it's the person who the tree that God has built is bearing the most fruit, right? It's the tree that's bearing fruit. You can have all the information and not have any fruit. Watch this. Keep going. It says, verse 18, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. The acts of the flesh are obvious, all right? So it's like, I don't even have to tell you this because it's obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissension, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not enter the kingdom of God. Okay? Those are people that are not led by the Spirit. They're living according to human wisdom. Okay? Their concern is reputation, building self up. And though they may have all the information, what Paul is saying is that, listen, I could be that person. I could be that person. And you guys are trying to be that person who knows all the stuff and you're powerful. But here's the thing. Verse 22, but the fruit of the Spirit is this, is love. So if you're looking for, hey, who really is the spiritual person in your midst? Don't strive after human wisdom. Strive after this stuff. What is it? Love. Boy, that person really loves people. That person has joy. This is, you're like, but that's foolishness. That's foolishness. How can you say that that's the person that's great? They don't know nothing. They don't have any power. They're not elders, right? They don't have positions of power. They have no influence. These are the people that are going to understand the wisdom of God because they submit to it. They submit and they say, God, all I want to know is you. It's not about me. It's about you. The fruit of the Spirit, this is what it looks like. This is when you're looking for the spiritual person in your midst, look for this person. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance. Wow. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Okay? That's the people that are spiritual, the people that are going to understand the Word of God. They're people that have crucified their own desires and their own fleshly desires, their desires for themselves. They've crucified that so that they can know God. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other. Right? We don't, as great Christians, we don't go around and say, I'm better than that person, or I want to be like that person, right? Because they're what I want to be. Because they're in a certain position, or they got a lot of people listen to them, or whatever. I love this. If John Piper, I like what he says about this. John Piper says, the prerequisite for grasping the wisdom of God is not a certain level of intelligence or education or experience. The prerequisite is moral, not intellectual. It has as much to do with what you love, with what you think. Not education, but sanctification is what makes one receptive to the wisdom that we speak. Not natural ability, but spiritual humility opens a person to the wisdom of God. I want to read something to you from James chapter 3. This is this is good too. It says in James chapter 3, verses 13 to 18, it says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom." See, real wisdom makes you humble. "But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness." Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference between the two types of people? Right? Wisdom and power and seeking after power, that works great in the world. Okay? Works great in the world. It doesn't work for knowing God. It works great in the world to get higher in your position in the world, in your corporation, politically, whatever. It works great there. It does not work for knowing God. Because when you seek it, you lose the ability to understand, because the things of God become foolish to you. That's what he's saying here. Go back to 1 Corinthians. We're going to finish up. And I mean it for real. I'm not just joking. "The Spirit teaches all things, even the deep things." This is verse 10. The deep things of God. Right? You want to know the deep things of God. Right? You want to know the really deep things, deeply spiritual? The Spirit teaches those things. The Spirit of God does. But he only reveals it to the people who are submissive, not seeking after for themselves. It says the Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God, for who knows a person's thoughts except their own spirit within them? In the same way, no one knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. Right? So I can't know Preston's mind. Only Preston knows what's on his mind. And so to get it from him, he has to reveal it to me. God reveals to us what's on his mind through the person of Jesus and through the Spirit. He gives it to the apostles. The apostles lay it down to us. This is the mind of God. He tells us this is logic. This is the truth of God. He goes on, it says, "What we have received is not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, so that we may understand what God has freely given us. This is what we speak, not in words taught us by human wisdom, but in words taught by the Spirit, explaining spiritual realities with spiritual taught words." The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolishness and cannot understand them because they are discerned only through the Spirit. The person with the Spirit makes judgments about all things, but such a person is not subject to mere human judgments. For who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. We have the mind of Christ. You can't understand God's wisdom until you humble yourself. You stop seeking wisdom from men on how you have a relationship with God. You say, "God, you're right. You're right about everything. What you said about that thing that I did the other day, that's wrong, you're right about that. What you said about me being a sinner, you're right about that. What you said about the way I should have a relationship with the opposite sex or with not, you're right about that. God, this doesn't seem fair to me. Reasonably, in my mind, it doesn't seem fair. But you're right about it. You're right about it. You said this is the way it is. You're right about it. You said that you're God of my life. I'm not God of my life. You're right about it. You're right about all of it. What you say is true, and anything that contradicts you is not. God, I submit to you. I submit to you. It's no longer, my life is no longer about me and my reputation and me being good and everybody looking at me as though I'm not trying to make myself God. You're God. I don't want people to look good upon me. Don't worship me. Don't think that I'm something special. God, you are good. You are great. You only deserve it, and your wisdom is perfect. And I submit everything to you. I submit it all to you. We come here with pride, wanting to look a certain way, wanting people to think we're great. Pastors, we're the worst because we're in front of people all the time. How do we know the wisdom of God? We say, God, I don't care about that. I don't care about it. All I care about is that people come to know you. People know you. They love you. I'm going to preach what Paul preached. Christ crucified. Christ crucified. That's what matters. Christ crucified. Died for us. He loves us. He's the king, not us. And if anybody else is getting power, if we see accolades going to anybody else, no. It goes to God. God, I thank you for your word. God, I thank you that you have revealed to us here under the trees, you've revealed to us truth that is not understood by most people in the world. They don't understand it because they're seeking after human wisdom. They're seeking spiritual truths in human ways. God, we just submit right now and say, God, we're not God. It's not about us. We're not smart enough to figure this out. And what we seek, God, is just to know your mind. We want to know the truth according to you, God, and we submit to whatever that is. We submit lordship to you. We submit it all to you, God. Instead of seeking power in our own, we're going to seek the fruits of the Spirit. We're going to seek to be led by the Spirit, God, because that's where we're going to learn this. God, we're going to seek to love and to be self-controlled, to not envy. God, we're going to seek forbearance. We're going to seek to be the people that are led by the Spirit and live that way, God, so that you'll reveal to us and make us more like Jesus. God, that's what we want. God, that's what we want desperately. God, nothing else matters. So God, we submit to you. We love you in Jesus' name.